Hello and welcome to ZED Talks. Thank you for being here. And today I have a very exciting guest who I met through LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn, as much as I give it a hard time, it is phenomenal for connecting with amazing people. And today I'd like to say I've got on the couch, but I've got on the screen Tom Emery. Tom's going to tell you what Tom does, and we've got some topics that we'd like to get into. So thank you so much for being here, Tom. You're a podcaster, you're experienced. I can probably learn so much from you, but thanks for being here. Tell us about you.
Yeah, so I'm Tom Emery. I am a people performance consultant. I like to style myself as either an honorary or a recovering chief people officer, one or the other, depending on my mood. So I'm a coach. I'm an author. I am a leadership development specialist, and my firm Hex works with businesses to help basically their individuals, their teams, and their organizations to reach their full potential. So might go a bit into my history and what inspires me, but I'm all about helping people to find joy in who they are, fulfillment in what they achieve, and confidence, I suppose, as well in who they are and what they can be.
I think the world needs more of you, Tom. I really do. I think we need to sprinkle a lot of love on leaders. And I'm not just going to say HR, but sort of leadership in general. I think we're in a really trying time right now. So I'd love to know about your inspiration of, how you transited from the role of a CHRO into what you do now, which is, very much needed. I'm interested and curious about your journey to do that. Would you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. So if I start at the beginning, so I grew up in the northwest, just on the outskirts of Greater Manchester, and I was a queer kid, and I was also a highly extroverted queer kid. I grew up in the 90s, but I found that often I felt like I had to sort of, I don't know, like retreat into the shadows a little bit because I was worried about people finding out who I was, and so when I sort of finally got the opportunity, the courage, whatever you like, in my late teens to come out, I found that my life became very different and it really transformed because I was able to be myself. And so that really inspired me to think about, well, that's what I want to help other people to do. And I'm not a martyr. I have like a strong altruistic streak, but a lot of that is like I enjoy it. That's what I get a kick out of. So, so I'm not a martyr. But that's why I went into HR really, because I thought, well, I want to work with people and I want to make their lives better and I want to help them. Now, obviously, when you work in HR, you're actually not seeing people quite at their best often because you might have just told them that, or you might have been involved in a meeting where they've just been told they've lost their job, or they're going through a grievance process, or they're in a disciplinary, or they've got a problem. And so I did HR roles for about 20 years, worked in lots of different organizations. Most of it was financial services. My last job was chief people officer in a wealth management firm. And, it was really in that role that I started to get the opportunity to do some of the bits of HR, which I really enjoyed, which was basically developing people. And it was working with the other execs. It was coaching them. So I did a coaching qualification and just helping them with their relationships and the dynamics and their egos and, what was going on for them and helping them to be effective. And I was also spending a lot of time sitting in governance meetings and doing compensation, all these sorts of things, which I could do, but I didn't really enjoy it. So that's the inspiration really that I decided to set up my own business. And it's been it has been really successful, much more successful than I anticipated. And so it's gone from a lifestyle business to, I suppose, a bit of a mission really to get the message out to as many people. So that was the transition.
Amazing. And I want to recognize that anyone listening, or, that there are some things that we go through, real challenges in life that maybe we want to keep concealed, or we want to not show parts of ourselves. And I think we're in a time and place now where we've just had to. I mean, you said that you come out, Tom, some years ago. I think more so than ever is we have to be ourselves, and to show up at work in our true selves is not easy. And I think there's still caveats to doing that in certain sectors. I really do. But I think that we all need to just let the mask drop and be who we really are and find
Mm,
our joy and purpose through whatever that is. I think money becomes less of a sort of a sparkly thing and more around, what creates great energy for me? Where is my purpose? And I can't do that unless I know who I am and what I'm about, and being able to be free to do that. So,
mm.
I'm super happy that you found your way, and it sounds like you're doing an amazing job with your with Hex. So the thing that I am really curious about is your book. So this is a recent thing, right? Could you
Mm.
tell us about your book and what it's
Yeah.
called and what's the ethos of it and what inspired you to do that?
Yeah. So the book is called People, Reach Your Full Potential as a Chief HR Officer. And I suppose it came from doing the well. So when I first went into a chief people officer role, so I'd done lots of jobs with a big global bank. I was with HSBC for a long time, and I'd done lots of different jobs, and um, done some really interesting things actually, and met some interesting people. And then I was made redundant from HSBC because they were doing all the ring fencing in the banking sector at the time, and my job was moving to Birmingham, and I was living in London at the time, and I didn't want to move to Birmingham. And ironically, I now live near Birmingham, so that's it's funny how things work out,
Yeah,
right?
it's funny how
Um,
that works.
yeah, so I got this job as chief people officer. It was with somebody that I'd worked with at HSBC. She was the new CEO, very, very supportive boss, brilliant person who I'm still very, very much connected to. Um, but if I'm honest, I didn't have a Scooby Doo what I was doing, and I spent the first 2 years really just. I mean, I don't know how I did it. I was sort of like constantly on the seat of my pants, and yeah, just didn't really know how to contract relationships properly. How to work with a board, like what do shareholders want, compensation, regulation, all this sort of stuff. Like at HSBC, I'd had an army of support around me as a generalist that could help with all that stuff, and then all of a sudden you're in a smaller organization, you got to do it all yourself. So I was thinking about, like, there is no manual really for a great chief people officer, and that's what I
Mm.
wanted to build. Now, I was having some coaching at the time off a business coach, a chap called Robin Waite, who's just an awesome coach. Really recommend him. And he's written a couple of books, and he said, like, you've got a book in there. Why don't you write it? And he said, as much as anything, it's a great marketing asset. And it's like, right, okay, so I'll have a go. So I wrote this book, and it's a story about somebody who's in a chief people officer role. It'll be no surprise, like, they're in a financial services organization, and she basically is struggling in the role, goes to a coach, and she works through a model, which is a model I developed, and that's what the book sort of hangs off. So it's called the CHRO Impact Framework. And yeah, I always laugh because I never really wanted anybody to read the book. Like, I just thought, I'll write this book and then I'll have something to just give to people for free. And that's all I want. I don't want anyone to actually read it. But when I spoke to the publishers and that, like Alison, who's the publisher I went with, she said, well, we don't really want to publish a book that nobody wants to read. So you will need to put a bit of effort into it. So ended up like writing this book and really enjoyed the process actually. And I'm writing the second one now, which is much harder. But really enjoyed this process, and then yeah, got the book out into the world. And I mean, an HR book written by an unknown is never going to be like, you're never going to make any money out of it. You pay to publish, and then you sort of see what comes back. And I think I've sold about 400 copies, and I've probably given away more than that. So there's probably about 1,000 copies of this book in the world at the moment, and yeah, I'm very proud of it. It isn't a bad book, and I get lots of good feedback. And I was actually in Waterstones on Piccadilly in London last week, and I went and had a look to see if they got it, and they got one copy of it. It's probably the only copy they've ever had. They've never sold one, but it's on the shelf at Waterstones in Piccadilly. So I was really pleased about that.
Oh, amazing. That's amazing. I mean, so first of all, congratulations. That
Thank
is
you.
writing a book is not an easy thing. Most people that know me know that I'm a published author in terms of fiction writing.
Wow.
It's under a pseudonym because it's not the kind of content that's attached to my professional life. The first book I wrote, it was like therapy. The second was much harder. And if anyone told me the route to editing and market and get it out there, I don't think I'd have ever have done it. I
No.
actually, it's a real it's like running a marathon. Until you do it, you don't know really what is involved, and
Mm.
it becomes so much more seasoned. Actually, I'm glad I didn't know what the process was. If I'm really honest, I probably wouldn't have done it. But it sounds like a very relatable book. I haven't read it. I'd like to get my hands on it, and I think that leaders, the CHR role. Funny enough, I was having a conversation this morning about somebody asked me. I've got maybe 60 people on a webinar, and it was a fireside chat, asking me about AI and lots of things. But actually, it was really about leadership. And the role of the CHRO. And I'm very controversial in what I think about the future role of the CHRO
Mm.
is, which is based on kind of like what I read from a McKinsey, from my own personal views. My PhD is centered around leadership and how the future of that needs to evolve. And I'm very early into that journey. So I'm super curious about things and
Mm.
how people think and feel. What do you think are the top qualities, and maybe your book centers on some of this, is what do you think that future profile of CHRO is? What are the top things and skills and behaviours they need,
Yeah.
in your opinion? I'd love to hear from you about that.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think that it's easy to try and look too far ahead. I think for
Yeah,
some of these roles, and
yeah,
the world is changing so quickly. And if you told me 4 or 5 years ago what you could do on AI today and what I can access as a normal person, I'd have I'd probably been quite surprised by that. So I think it's difficult to look too far ahead. However, I think there are some common skills that it's not just about being a great HR leader. It's not even just about being a great leader. It's just about being like a good, resilient human being that's able to get on in the world, right? Um, and so my model that I built actually was built around a core mindset, 4 skills and 4 personas. So the core mindset is to be purposeful and always learning. And I think that's just a good mantra for life, right? So being mindful, not mindless about what you do, where you spend your time, the conversations you have, the relationships that you build. Because I think far too often we go through life quite mindlessly, actually, and
yeah,
like that's not how we're going to be in fact effective. To be always learning, really important. Always be on the edge of our learning, looking at what we're gonna, what we need to find out next, and that's uncomfortable. But being at the edge of that discomfort is really important. So then the 4 skills are commercial explorer, expert in field, leader of HR and culture and performance catalyst. So commercial explorer is about curiosity essentially, and it's about recognizing that if you want to be a good people person, as I'll put it, you've got to understand your business. You've got to understand the mechanics, the levers that you pull, the profit levers, the revenue levers, the cost levers. What you're there to deliver, what client experience you're you're gonna need, and all that. Now, you don't have to have like a really deep knowledge about it, but I think you have to be interested. And one of the reasons that I probably left my job as a chief people officer because I wasn't interested enough in financial services. It just didn't really
yeah,
float my boat, to be honest, in many ways. So I think that is important. And I think that's, lots of HR teams out there don't really give a monkeys about, what the business is trying to do. They're just there to deliver HR. And I don't think that's right. Expert in field is as you'd expect. Like we've got to be good at what you do. You've got to have all the foundations in place. And that, if you think about, I suppose, going into the future, that's really relevant because the world changes and you've got to keep your skills fresh and up to date and, at the edge of what's needed. The leader of HR is about building a fantastic HR team. Often people teams, HR teams they neglect themselves in terms of their own capability, their own development.
yeah,
Bit of guilt in there about, I can't spend the budget on my own team. I've got to spend it elsewhere. But, it's an important team. And if you want it to work well, you've got to consider those skills and also consider how your team works together. So, like what are your silos doing essentially? So is your talent acquisition actually attached to what's going
yes,
on in talent and reward and all that sort of stuff? Does it form that coherent whole? And then finally, the performance and culture catalyst is all about, how do you support the business to have like a great strategy that thinks about people, thinks about culture, thinks about making it really really effective. And then the four personas. So if you think about the skills of what you've got to do, the four personas are what you need to be. So the first one is enterprise leader, and that is, linked to commercial explorer, not just banging the drum for the people agenda, getting involved in other things, making the links, connecting the dots, all that sort of stuff. You've then got business talent and HR talent enabler there too, which is just like, you're the gatekeeper of talent. You're not going to do all the talent stuff yourself, but you're gonna be the gatekeeper and make sure it's all happening. And then the final one is trusted partner. And to be honest, that's the focus of the second book, is about how you, as an HR leader, act as a trusted partner to all those different parts of the organization, whether it be the people, your CEO, your exco, your board, your regulator, whatever it is. Yeah, sorry, that was a long answer, Zoe.
No, that's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that although I was making notes there, so I'm turning my head and probably didn't spend
Mm.
on notes. I think that there's so much. Do you know what stands out to me, Tom, is this is not rocket science. It's foundational things that actually packaged together.
Mm.
And that to me is the gap right where we are today. I have a very specific thought that I think a CHRO is the next CEO. And to do that, there's two core skills actually that are really missing from what commercial HR leaders think they are today. And that's sales and marketing. I think they need to be brilliant sales and
Mm.
marketeers. And you'll know that from coming from, same as me, CPO, CHRO role into having our own business, and actually
Mm.
acquiring new skills. That learning mindset is never far from my plate. It's constant. There's always something constantly to learn. And I think that's so relevant to where there's so much noise and distortion and distraction around what we should be doing, but actually like getting back to those core personas and
Mm.
really those foundational things that we need to be doing is really around, how do I be the best version of myself?
Yeah.
How do I understand and correlate to the business? And you picked up on something which I want to make sure has landed very well to anyone listening to this. You will not be successful if you choose to be in an industry or a sector that you have no resonance with. That is
Mm.
like saying I'm a sneaker designer and I'm working in manufacturing. It's as boring as that. I'm like, you
Yeah.
have to love the sector or have a passion for something. It's not HR is HR is HR is, and I hear that over again. HR is HR no
Mm.
matter where you go. I disagree, because the
Yeah.
difference is that you're really passionate about, or you have a synergy or something. Um, and it's why I work for Diesel. I lost like 6 stone and then I could fit into their jeans. And I love denim sort of thing. Why I went to Adidas, because I've always been overweight, and I thought working in sport I would be more inclined to exercise. Like there's correlations of, and some of it has been deliberate and some of it hasn't. But actually, we undervalue the desire part, and to feel quite fulfilled and happy in our jobs, we need to have a level of satisfaction.
Mm.
And the desire, when you are in a place where you feel aligned to, the inclination is more to progress, is more to learn. There's more desire to do those things, to grow and evolve into new roles and be progressive and fight's probably a strong word, but to advocate for your team. I don't think you can do any of that when you don't have a passion for the thing that this company does or what it
Yeah.
serves. I think that's a really, really important distinction. Um, and by the way, 400 sales in a book, I think is pretty good. And I kind of, anyone reading, listening to this, you must go and read it, because I think that we can all, no knowledge is ever bad knowledge, in my view. You always learn something. And
Yeah.
this might be the thing that there's a couple of nuggets in there that will really help this next part pave of the CHRO. And I
Yeah.
agree with you that we can't look too outwardly. We can't, every CPO that I've asked, or CHRO that I've asked over the past year, where do you see the future of work going? They say, I can't tell you in 2 years, let alone 10 years. It's
No.
just not possible right now. So I've got to get to this next step, to envisage the next step, to envisage the next step. Like it's a step-by-step process,
Yeah.
which kind of like, that makes me think that you have to be equipped. Your skill set has to be equipped to be an ongoing learner and learn fast and
Mm,
keep percolating and asking and being that curiosity mindset, because
yeah,
that's what will open portals to the next thing, whatever that
yeah,
next step is, you know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you've got to be adaptable.
Yeah.
Um, It's, I mean, it's really easy to say, isn't it? Like change is hard for lots of us, and yeah, we can maybe get into that. I mean, if anybody wants a book, by the way, don't buy it. I'll give you a free one. I've got a garage full of the things. But yeah, anybody can come and get a free book off me. That's why I wrote it. I want to get the message out. Yeah, so don't buy it. Yeah, so it's all about, I think, yes, it's about being adaptable, but I don't know whether this is controversial. I think we just got to stop taking life so seriously,
Yeah.
and stop just getting so wound up about things. So, I have this proposition as a coach, which is called Beyond Coaching, which is like it's basically like a thinking partnership. It suggests that we use a lot of coaching techniques in it, but actually we go a bit further and we go to like a thinking partnership. We'll give advice where we need to. We'll just sort of give a bit of context because I sort of feel like what execs seem to be asking for is like if they want the answer and I've got it, I should be giving them the answer, not saying, oh, what do you think about that sort of thing. So it's like
Yeah,
this, just
I agree.
this idea of going a step further. Now, I would say one of the most common things that I deal with in my beyond coaching relationships, particularly with C-suite people, is that just this idea, just the ego and the assumptions that they are making around what's going on in the world and what's going on in their relationships, and also the amount of control that they have over them, actually, because they seem to think that they should be able to control what other people think of them and control how other people respond to them, which is just it's garbage, right? We can't control anything that anybody else can do. All we can go is we can go into these relationships with intention, and we can try and remove as much ego as we can so that we don't get upset when they don't do something that we want them to do, or they respond with something defensive, or they respond with a challenge back.
Yes.
um, and I just sort of think if we could think about, I mean, I think just as human beings, actually, just be less. It's not sensitive because I'm sensitive. I quite like being a sensitive person, but it's not sensitive. It's just being able to put things into perspective a little bit more and recognize that everybody's coming at things with different contexts and different experiences and different baggage. And yeah, so how thinking about how people experience you and working on your behaviors, the way you show up, I think will make you successful in life, whatever the world throws at you.
I'd absolutely agree. So in 2021, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and I wanted to do more education. So I left school at 15. I didn't leave with any education. I mean, it's criminal to leave at that age now, but I went into the world wide, and had great ambition. And for most part, I've fulfilled everything that I ever said that I would do, which is,
Mm.
I guess I'm not somebody that just says I'll do it, and doesn't. It's like when I declare to the world I'm doing something, it's typically done. Um, and I remember always feeling quite spiritually inclined, as in I was always fascinated by. I became a psychologist because of the cognition and understanding how the brain works. And then I became fixated with the human spirit. Like, this spirit, it depends on what your beliefs are, of course.
Mm.
I don't believe this human life is the only life that we have. I think the soul and the spirit is beyond this time, um, and world. So, with that in mind, I became very, very interested in the esoteric and metaphysical psychology, which is called transpersonal psychology. And that means to transcend beyond one's ego. So, this
Mm.
is Abraham Maslow was the godfather of this type of psychology. And for 3 years, I did my master's around consciousness, around obviously neuroscience comes into that to a degree. And I started to really think about the human in a very different way, because I think lots of us are searching for something in our lives, and we might go around the world in search of it or whatever it might be. But I realized in my learning that there's a physical part, an emotional part, a mental part, a social part, and a spiritual part of all of the dimensions of the human. And this alignment, as you would say, this kind of like understanding the self-regulation, I own my reaction, my thoughts,
Mm.
my feelings, but I own nothing else really, is mastering myself. I need to master me so that I can almost like show up with no um charged reaction, so I can
Yeah.
just see things as an event rather than good or bad, negative or positive. I'm just observing an experience here. And I think that's something that I did a study. So my dissertation was based on, and I probably called it the wrong thing. Well, actually the results say that I did. My research question was, what's the perception of spirituality in human resource management? And the outcome of that was the word spiritual itself was massively a trigger. And even though the participants that were in my study considered themselves spiritual, they found that there was not a place in the workplace for it. That if
Mm.
they were deemed as spiritual, that this may ruin their reputation. They may be laughed at. You know, there was a real reputational damage that they thought. Yet they agreed that spiritually inclined organisations and cultures would be more cohesive, more in touch with what's going on, empathetic, compassion, all those kind of things. And so I toyed with the idea, and I've submitted an academic journal to change it to consciousness, because I think
Mm.
now we're talking about conscious, like you mentioned, intentional leadership.
Yeah.
Um, and I wonder if we start to talk about intentional and consciousness in leadership, that we would edge towards this um, place. And wherever the workplace is at home, it's in another physical location, you know, it's blurred now. But if
Mm.
we kind of had more consciousness and intention about what we're trying to do, and who we're trying to serve, and what problems we're trying to solve, then we would be a better leader anyway, regardless of what role you're in. I mean, do you
Yeah.
agree with that? Does that sit with you?
Yeah. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, I think it goes back to what I was starting, where I sort of started from when we were talking about the purpose thing, is like, or being purposeful, um, is about mindless versus mindful. And we think about mindfulness and we think about it as a meditation. And I'm not talking about mindfulness
Yeah,
in terms of meditation. I'm talking about mindfulness in terms of presence and, being as aware as you can. I mean, obviously you can't be like always aware of like, oh, now I'm going to go and do this. Now, we operate on autopilot. That's how we save energy and, all that sort of stuff. So, we can only probably be in, it's like the old thinking fast, slow Daniel Kahneman. We can probably only be in the thinking brain or the system one thinking or whatever it is 5% of the time. But I think lots of people aren't even in it the 5% of the time. I think quite often we just believe, but can I swear on this?
yeah, of course you can. Go
Yeah,
for it.
like, we believe our own bullshit basically
Yes,
about what's
yes.
happening, and it's just bullshit. We haven't got a clue. We have absolutely no idea what's going on in other people's heads and what's going on around us. And I think the quicker you can recognize that you're being hijacked by some bullshit and just take it back and just say, actually, I have no control over this, and that's fine. I'll just smile and get on with things, and I'll just be the good person, and I'll let everyone experience me as as an honest and pleasant, person who can say what they think and do it in a kind way and do it in a direct way and a fair way. I think you're much happier, and I think I'm much happier since I learned a bit more how to do that. Now, that's not to say that I don't get hijacked by my own bullshit every day, because I do, and it happens constantly. But I think I have got more, sort of more astute or more observant of it and recognize when it's happening, and can therefore pull myself back into something more sensible a bit quicker. And, I really like my life. Like, I have a great time. I've got really nothing to moan about at all. So, I think I'm sort of proof. I've got a lot of privilege, like, don't get me wrong. But, I don't know. Like, I think you can do it. I think there are choices, and this goes back to where I always talk about agency, which I think is lacking in HR leaders as well. If I was to be controversial,
Well, I love controversial, because I
mm.
think that's how we. I think sometimes HR's always played very safe.
Mm.
Not me. I've not done, and I've always experienced some form of bullying in the workplace, and it's because I am
Mm.
a radically different thinker than most. And
Interesting.
actually, if I think about this, no one will hire me ever again. And I make a very bold statement here: you will not hire me and then tell me exactly how to do my fucking job. I won't
Mm.
have it. I will not have it, because that is a symptom of what I've dealt with a very long time. Come in and do what you do, but do it in this way. We want change in this way. And I'm like, if you could only allow people to really be who they are. I mean, I don't have any, I don't have any particular view about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I say that from a Caucasian white female that has privilege. So I'm not going
Mm.
to sit and say that they don't have any value. Of course it does. But if we were to be really ourselves, and we were embraced to be ourselves, and all that we are, we wouldn't need strategies. We would have a much kinder, more accepting kind of workforce and place to work. And I think that I too, the bullshit can really sabotage us. And I think one of the things that, I think and feel that one of the moments is that you become aware, right? That you said this, that you can distinguish, hang on a second, this
Mm.
is not like, this is my ego brain, and this is my kind of like my heart. Let's say, I always say the head and the heart, shortest
Yeah.
in distance, longest journey ever. Most people sleepwalk through life until
Mm.
they become aware and conscious about their choices and decisions and the impact of those. Some people might call that manifestation or law of attraction. I just call that you can create the life that you want with the stories that you tell yourself, and that your thoughts and your feelings that you have, because they drive physiology.
Mm.
That's a whole nother kind of stratosphere I could go into. I feel like we are so distracted and distorted with so many stories aren't real.
Yeah.
And how do we stop that? So if we come back to the kind of conscious leader, or go to the conscious leader,
Mm.
um, how do we start that journey? How do we start? Because I think it's a self-inquiry journey. It's introspective. And you've got to be ready to introspect and hold the mirror up and say, who am I? What am I? And not,
Yeah.
people become very unnerved when you ask them, who are you? And they say their
Yeah.
name. No, who really are you?
Yeah.
Why are you here? What do you mean, in the
Mm.
room, in my job? No, why are you here? It's very, very unnerving for people. And I wonder if you've got some advice or some words that kind of like to start this journey of becoming more aware, conscious, intentional. I mean, it's what you do for a living. So I'd
Yeah.
love you to share.
Well, I mean, my starting point would always be, you're not becoming self-aware to become more self-aware, right? You're becoming more self-aware to become more happy, effective, insert your adjective like that's positive, right? So self-awareness in itself is not a benefit. Self-awareness is only a benefit if you're able to do something with that awareness. And I think that's part of the problem with where some teams get stuck, for example, because they'll do the insight session, or they'll all go through a Hogan or whatever, and they'll get all this data, but then it just goes in a drawer. They don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the reason for that is because it's uncomfortable to change, and
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable to, like lean into an area that you haven't actually got a preference to behave, or to admit that you have like an area which you're not actually always at your best in. But in the discomfort, without getting too sort of like sounding too cliched or whatever, but in the discomfort is where you'll find the magic. So
Yes.
if you're getting signals that something is uncomfortable, then my advice is always to think, okay, well, you feel uncomfortable. So what is your brain, what is your reptilian brain or whatever telling you to do? So for example, I know I can be quite defensive, right? I don't really like people criticizing me because I'm quite sensitive, right? So if I get an email from a client that says you've not done this very well, it doesn't happen very often, by the way, but sometimes like maybe I don't quite meet the standards that I would aim for. My first instinct will be to reply straight away to that email and tell them why they're wrong, and why actually I am, I do deliver high quality work, and why it's like this extraneous circumstance, or it's their fault or whatever. That's my instinct, right? But that's my brain tricking me. That's not the right thing to do. Or that's not the right thing. So, I mean, I tell a story quite a lot. Like, I've sent emails. Well, sorry, I've had emails, been really pissed off about it, thought, no, shouldn't send it now because I'm going to send like a terrible reply that's really defensive. Wait a few hours, think, oh yeah, my brain's got there now, send the email off, read it again 3 hours later and think, what on earth did you send that for, you absolute idiot? Because it wasn't ready. Like I hadn't got myself back into that, back into that state, the state that I needed to be. And so what I always advise people is if your brain is telling you to do something, you're triggered and your brain is telling you to do something, like first of all, stop. But second of all, do the opposite, right? So if your brain is telling you to send an email, just do not send an email. If your brain is saying be defensive, try the opposite and try to say, no, yeah, that's my fault. Yeah. Like didn't come up to the mark there. Like just try and do the opposite. And I think that will feel really, really uncomfortable because you're going down, you're going against what I think are your absolutely strongest instincts of,
Yes.
how you genetically are made and how you've learned to deal with things in life. But just try it. Try some different things that make you feel uncomfortable. And if you're feeling like a little bit of discomfort, that's probably where your learning is. And that's probably where you need to, put your effort. So there's a
Totally.
first step.
Totally. I think I often say that the body keeps a score.
Mm,
And that there's a GPS and sat nav that we have within us. So we talk about signs and symbols, and feeling sensations. And I often sort of correlate if there's anything actively seek discomfort because I know that's what I need to work on.
yeah.
And I think that is a call to action to anybody. Don't avoid discomfort. Don't avoid conflict within yourself. Handle it. Deal with it. Don't suppress it. It's
Mm,
about working through why is it there. Be curious. Think of yourself like you're looking at yourself from a third party. Why am I experiencing this? What's this trying to tell me? And I think that's a great way to counteract. If I'm feeling this way inclined, what's the opposite of that, and do that.
yeah.
I think it's a really good advice. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Well, you've got
And
to be
it's
careful, obviously. Don't do anything illegal or anything stupid. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you automatically say, well, what's the opposite to what I think I'm doing, then you're automatically going to move yourself into a different part of the brain
absolutely.
where you're thinking more pragmatically.
Totally, absolutely.
Mm,
I mean, we are so magnificent. So when we talk about, lots of people don't ask me why I work with AI, and it's to protect and preserve the human. And my job here is to help humanity evolve
mm,
through technology, right? So that's my purpose here. Is that I'm a fast learner. I can help pave the way. I can help people steer that path, like you do in your corner and lane and whatever area you're treading. I kind of feel like the human is the most super intelligent. We have so much more knowledge than we can even particularly understand. Our body will also steer us right because our energy, everything about us is carved over long periods of time. We've got a memory, but we've also got a memory which is we need to access in specific ways. Sometimes we need to go into a different state of consciousness to access that.
mm,
But the body is often a temperature check of like how things are or how things should be. Bearing in mind that we're wired cognitively negative, so that because we're looking for fear, we're
yeah.
looking to keep safe. So the brain is so overpowering. And I always say that people live here, in the mind, and actually. To balance that out, your question technique is balancing out that opposite because everything has duality: night, day, yin, yang,
Mm,
um, dark, light, love, hate. Everything has a duality. So
mm,
actually, if we look for the duality and say, what is my natural inclination here? And is that going to get me the result I want? Maybe
yeah.
not. So what would the opposite do of that? And I think that's a really healthy way to start looking at life, actually, not just work, but life, because
Yeah.
we are very triggered by lots of things around us. There's always things to be triggered by, always. And I find it fascinating our natural responses. And actually, I'm smiling because yesterday I'm trying to go through a space in the car, like I'm driving over a bridge, and there's somebody coming towards me. There's room for two cars, but they clearly think there isn't. So I
Mm,
don't stop. I keep going, and they're kind of like at me, and I'm like, Wow, you get wound up so easily.
Yeah.
Wow, you must live a very tempestuous life if this is all it takes for you to absolutely lose your cool over
Mm,
this one thing. And I feel like there's a lot of leaders that probably need, if that's all it takes, what else do you get so triggered by? And you must
mm,
be exhausted
yeah.
if that's all it takes, you know. It just makes me
Yeah.
smile how people get very triggered.
Yeah.
It sounds like they need your book, and
Yeah.
I want one of those copies, Tom. I want
Yeah,
to
no,
be
you
one
can have one.
of those people. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd love.
without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, I'm really interested in, I'm really interested in mindset, and I'm really interested in beliefs. And I actually
Mm,
just read a book about beliefs, which I can't remember what it's called because I read it on my Kindle. And you never, when you're reading on your Kindle, you never remember the title of books because you don't see the cover.
yeah.
But it's by Nir Eyal, so it's Nir Aleyal, and he wrote a book called Indistractable about sort of distractions. But he's just released this book called about beliefs that I forget what it's called. I mean, it's just like the research and the experiences that people have around mindset, are just absolutely like they're mind blowing. You know, he's got an example in there of somebody who literally had not open heart surgery, but you know, was literally like cut open in surgery without anesthetic, didn't feel any pain because of mindset. You know, the
Yeah,
mindset that you can
absolutely.
put yourself into. And I just think, I mean, my general mindset I try to have is everything will be all right. That's, you know, whatever happens, it'll probably, you know, it'll probably all come out in the wash or whatever you know, the right phrase is. I think also like a big realization for me, and I think a big realization for some of the people that I've worked with is going back to that point I made about control and just recognizing that you really have very little control over anything. And
Yep.
the quicker you sort of come to terms with that,
Yes.
um,
Yep.
not to say you have no agency, because that's also what I believe in. Like, I believe people have more agency than they think they do, but they have agency around themselves and controlling themselves. And what tends to happen is if you change your behavior, then the people around you shapeshift and they change their behavior in response. So if you're more assertive and you have better boundaries and you're able to say what you want, what you need in an effective way, then
Yeah.
other people will respond to that. And it's not like you have to do it in an, you know, manipulative or persuasive way. This is just it's just how the world
Yeah.
works. It's magic, absolute magic.
It is magic. You're right. Um,
Mm.
I had to write down a bunch there, but have you come across Dr. Joe Dispenza's work?
I don't think I have. No.
So, so he had a horrendous accident and was told he would never walk, would be completely paralyzed.
Mm.
And with the power of his mind, he rebuilt vertebra by vertebra by
Wow.
vertebra. And he talks
Yeah.
about becoming supernatural, and that's one of his books. And the placebo effect is another of his books, and it is phenomenal. And that's where I probably first got my inkling of this really matters. And he's got a on Gaia TV, Gaia
Mm.
TV. He does Rewired, which is literally about rewiring the brain
Right.
um, into the way that you want to design and think. So he imagined himself in that new version of his body and acquired the thoughts and feelings as if he'd acquired already this new body. And he tells us, and his life work has been around this exact principle that he has built. And I think there's symmetry in here of like being able to have this surgery and completely disconnected from the pain. Um,
Mm.
and I think there's a lot of correlation there, which is awesome. And actually, that radical acceptance of there are things that I cannot control. And I can only control very little. I can control how I think, I respond, and I feel.
Yeah.
And if I take radical ownership for those things, I transform my inner world. And by transforming my inner world, radiates and permeates to the outer world.
Mm.
And that's what Joe Dispenza talks about. And so um, I'm desperate for this to get into mainstream. I really
Yeah.
am. Because
Yeah.
the more people just take control of what they can control and work on that continuously, relentlessly,
Yeah.
they will become a better version of themselves, which everyone benefits from.
Yeah. Yeah. And And just, I mean, bringing this back to HR leaders, I can't do a podcast appearance without getting this out, which is just like being my bonnet about
Go on, tell
that.
me.
So I have a real bee in my bonnet about there are a few people. I'm not going to mention any names because they're got quite big followings on LinkedIn and things, but there are a few people that are literally making a career out of telling HR leaders how difficult their life is and how it's
Yeah.
really difficult for them because they've got to take on everyone else's emotional labor and they've got to get passed from pillar to post and they've got to do this and do this and nobody sees what value they add. They do it all behind the scenes and all that, right? Yes, I agree, like with a lot of it. But what is the point in us just keep telling people how hard done by they are? Like, this is
Yeah.
the job, right? Let's
Yeah.
think about how we can do this more effectively. And the world is not going to do that for us as HR leaders. We have to change the way we operate. And that, like I said, that really is like one of my big crusades as well, is to say,
Yes.
like, stop telling yourself that you're really hard done by. If you don't want to take on other people's emotional labor, you've got two choices. Either you make a choice not to, and you work on that. That's not
Yes.
easy, but you can do more of that. Or you go and get a different job in a different profession because HR is people and it's full of emotion. It's full of messy people who are angry,
Yes.
sad, disillusioned, disappointed, happy, whatever. You got to embrace that. That's the best bit about the job in a way. Like,
I think you're right though. It's the stories, isn't it?
mm,
It's the stories that we tell ourselves, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. To keep so how can we ever make change when we're living in an old story? That's
mm,
like the same form of insanity as we say, keep beating the drum in the same way and you're going to get something different.
yeah,
It is that in order the only way I can change is the only way I can make change effective is to change myself, change my story, change the outcome for me, and then things will change around me.
mm,
And that's, I think, the challenge that I would always give to any leaders out there that listening to this is the change. And we've said this for years and years. The change starts with you. So
yeah.
be the change you want to see. And and I don't know why that's been lost in translation so much over the years. Because even as in my early career in HR, we're still talking about the same goddamn things, isn't it? It's
Yeah, yeah,
crazy.
yeah. Absolutely
So,
crazy.
but at
Yeah.
least we've got to the point now, Tom, where people like us can be change makers in our space, and I think that that's remarkable. And
Mm,
I have much respect for what you're doing, and keep on doing it. And I know that we're coming to the end of our time together, but maybe we can reconnect and do another session, because
yeah.
I really want to keep tracking. I think for my own personal interest and for my research is how our leaders changing, what problems are they still experiencing, and are these systemic, or are these, there's a whole plethora of interests that I have in
Mm,
curiosity. Um, yeah, so thank you for all that you've come with and all that you've shared, and I really want people to take you up on your offer to get your book, get your work out there.
yeah,
So there'll be links in the description to connect with you, Tom.
yeah.
Um, but I'm really appreciative of your time.
No, I've
And
had a great time. Thank you. Thank you for letting me just, rant on about my passions and points of annoyance, irritation.
but honestly, it's very relatable. It's very relatable, and I
Yeah.
think that in AI and all that it is, it doesn't create connection; it creates separation.
Mm, yeah.
And then that's one thing that is that it's good to be able to express, to be able to share. I think that's what mustn't be lost. Right behind AI, by the way, my prediction is once we've got more settled about AI, we will be in droves. In-person experiences will be wanting more connection, more. I mean, Europeans, well, actually, HR people are terrible at networking. Americans do it much better. They're 3 to 4 times a week out at events, and that's how they're getting business, or they're being successful, or they're
Mm,
changing their perspective, because they're hearing and absorbing all sorts of things. Now, some of it might be terrible, but I always think that it's up to you what you do with that knowledge. You can use it, and you can use it for power, or you can, lean into a story which you don't want to do.
yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
No, thank you. And if anybody wants a really optimistic view on sort of the world in response to AI, which is quite rare because people are sort of like very sort of like, oh God, everything's going to end, you know. There was an episode of Modern Wisdom, so Chris Williamson's podcast, Modern Wisdom.
Oh
This
yes,
week or last
love
week, there
him.
was a guy on it. I forget what his name is, but he provided a really interesting perspective on the future of AI and how, you know, just really putting a positive slant on it. And I think in the HR profession, particularly, we hear a lot about, oh, this is going to take jobs or this is going to change things. But you know, I think there's a different perspective. So yeah.
I
So
shall
thanks
be
for having me.
looking at myself, but thank you. I do like him, as I do listen to him, and I always say to people, we talk about consumption as food and drink, but think about what we're putting in our eyes and our ears,
Yeah,
because that's another.
definitely.
To me, my environment and who I'm listening to is the definition between my failure or success. That's critical
Yeah,
for my mindset. And I've had to shed a lot of people in the last few years. They can't stay in my life because they're too blinkered in the world. They're not allowing me to grow or
yeah.
supporting me to grow. So, and no judgment, you know. We
Mm.
all need supporters around us. So thank you so much again, Tom.
No, thanks
Um,
for having me. I've had
thank
a great
you.
time. Yeah.
Thank you for being here. And for anyone listening, please connect with Tom. And if there's anything that's kind of really fermented or come up for you, then, you know, we always love to know your feedback.
Yeah.
So
Give me your
thank
feedback.
you. Yeah, absolutely, always. And so thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And until next time, bye for now.